Okay, so I'm Isabel Churcher, Senior Manager for Museums at Arts Council England, and really delighted to be talking about how museums can access grants. I'm talking today specifically about project grants, and museums have been able to apply for a couple of years, and we're very keen to get more museums to apply, consideringly during these challenging times. So I do recommend that you have a look at our strategy. Let's create. It's all of interest, but there are two particular pages, 37 and 38, that provide a focus on how we at Arts Council will support the development of cultural communities, and museums really have a significant role to play in that. So museums are at the heart of Arts Council England's strategy, Let's Create. And I thought it'd be useful to quote this for you. So museums are centres of knowledge and cultural participation. They work with local communities to create understanding of people and places. So as you can see, we're very much focused on what museums are in communities to achieve, and our project grants are there to help museums achieve that. So specifically about project grants. So the great news is project grants is an open fund, so you can apply at any time you want to. There are absolutely no deadlines. You apply whenever you choose. At the moment, you need to be an accredited museum or really work closely with accredited museums to apply to project grants. We are doing a very thorough review and we're looking at all sorts of issues, and it could be from April 2021 onwards that we may involve non-accredited, but at the moment, just to be clear, that you do need to be accredited. Also, projects must benefit audiences. That could be short term, so it might be delivering projects, or it can be longer term. So for example, you can do research and development, looking at audience development plans, and I'll talk more about that later on. And just wanted to ensure that you're aware and really encourage you. So museum applications have a really high success rate at the moment. And last time I looked, we were actually top of the leaderboard on success rates. So I just want you to assure you that the staff at Arts Council really understand museums, what we're here to achieve, and that your application has a good possibility of success. So project grants, you can apply for anything between £1,000 and £100,000. And as you can see, we invest in all art forms and disciplines. I'm going to focus on museum practice, but for example, you could do a mixed project. So if you wanted to include arts activity or digital activity, absolutely the project grants is there to support those sorts of activities. And again, I'll talk more about this later, but applications from 1,000 to 15,000 have a 6-week turnaround. So you will get a decision really quite quickly within 6 weeks. And those over 15,000 is a 12-week turnaround. So we've made some changes between July and next April, and this is really in recognition of the current challenging circumstances that we are all living through. So the first great news is that we've removed the requirement for the 10% match funding. Of course, if you do have match funding, do let us know, but it isn't an eligibility criteria, and all projects will be looked at equally regardless of any amount of match funding. So that's really great news considering challenging economic times that we have. We're also encouraging applications from individual museum freelancers. So if you know or work with individual freelancers, do encourage them to apply. We're encouraging research and development activity. Also, organisational development activity, then this is an opportunity for people to look at business models, income generation. So as long as it benefits audiences in the long term, you can put applications in, for example, for governance reviews, business planning, any activity like that. Now, a key issue for us is that we've got some equality objectives. We're very aware that particular groups of people have been impacted on considerably during the pandemic. So those are, for example, people with disabilities, Black, Asian, minority ethnic, and also children and young people and older people. So we are looking particularly favourably on applications that are delivering to those groups, if that's what your project involves. So the first thing to do is to go on Grantium and to create your user account and your applicant profile. And the great news is you only need to do this once. And I have been assured that creating that profile is a straightforward thing to do, but it is important that you do it as soon as possible. Rather than wait until you put your application in, because it takes a few days to validate. As you might expect, we want to ensure that all applicants are correctly recorded. So I recommend that after hearing this, that you make a cuppa and then you sit down and do your Grantium account, and then it's all sorted and organised. Okay, so top tips for applying. So these are really practical things, and the first thing that we really recommend is that you do type everything on a Word document separately, so that when you're on Grantium that you can copy and paste. You may have heard from others that sometimes Grantium doesn't, well, for a start, it doesn't automatically save. So you have to manually click save, and you have to keep remembering to do that. But also sometimes it times out. So it's really important that you've got all your information captured separately before you go on Grantium. We recommend you read the whole guidance and the museum information sheet first, and that really ensures that you're clear about what we're looking for. And then we do have case studies on our website, so it's a really good idea to look at those, and I will talk about some case studies as well a bit later on. And then finally, I did find that there's an artist who has written a blog, again with some very practical guidance. It's more for artists, but there's a lot of very useful, as I said, practical information in there. His name is Jake Orr, Jake, and surname is ORR. And he's written a blog, and there's also a template in there as well, so that you can actually look at the questions asked and then fill that in if you find that helpful in preparing. So we can't formally recommend that because it's obviously an individual that's written it, but I thought that that was very useful. So in terms of the application form, what we're looking for, we ask for some basic details, which I can explain, and then we have 4 criteria. So one is about quality, where you're demonstrating the quality of your idea. Another one, which I've already mentioned, is about public engagement, either shorter term immediate or longer term public engagement. And then there's a section on finance and a section on management. And then, as you would expect, the more money you ask for, the more questions we will ask of you. Okay, so the brief summary is just that, but I've looked at a few successful examples, and they're very clear in terms of what they really want to achieve from their project. So that's your first opportunity to really sell your idea. It's obviously the first thing that staff in the Arts Council will read. So just be very clear on what your project aims to achieve. and who will benefit from the project. It's only 600 characters, so it's very short. So use your words wisely on that. Then basic details for the amount that you've applied for as well. Then personal access costs. So we want to ensure that there are no barriers to people applying. So we do provide money for access costs. So do look at that. Then there's national lottery objections. There are groups of people who would prefer not to receive money from the national lottery, so we can fund projects through grant and aid. So that's purely to let us know it doesn't affect a decision at all. And then obviously your project start and end date. So quality. So this is really you summarizing your recent work. So giving the staff member that's reading it a clear feeling of what sort of organization that you are and describing how you're a great quality organization. And then the aims of what you want to do. And I've got some case studies later, so I'll give some examples. And also who is involved. So any partners that you're working with, any individuals that you're working with. And for the larger projects, then we would expect more information, what the wider impact of the project is. Okay, so for public engagement, if you can explain who will engage with the activities, so really what sort of groups of people. So it might be a very large, kind of broad brush activity, or it might be very focused on smaller individual groups. Either is fine. It's just you being really clear in your application what the purpose of your project is. And as you would imagine, we absolutely understand that during COVID times that you will need to take social distancing into account. So we wouldn't anticipate larger numbers at all at the moment. It's really how you manage your activity, taking into account the government guidelines for making your activity safe. So finances. As I've said earlier, we know that it's really tough, challenging times economically. So we have removed that need for match funding, which is really helpful for organisations at the moment. But you can include, for example, volunteer time as support time, and that's good for us to see that you've got volunteer support and what you valued it at. So that sort of information in museums is particularly relevant because as you know, museums work with volunteers so much. So for management, so the next two sections, management and finance, are really about giving us the confidence that you can manage this effectively and also that you can manage the finances effectively. So that's really saying to us, what's your experience of managing a project? What have you done in the past that's similar? And explaining that to us. And then as a member of staff reading an application, you can say, fine, that's great. They've done that sort of project, worked with partners before. We have every confidence that you'll be able to manage this project effectively. So we do ask for a project plan timeline. And we also ask how you evaluate your project, and that can be very light touch, looking at some of the applications that have gone through. That can be about visitor book comments, Facebook, TripAdvisor. It really depends on the type of project that you're looking to do. So some case studies. So I was trying to keep this kind of confidential while also giving a real flavour of the sorts of applications that we've had. This one was a museum in the Lakes. They applied for 15,000, so that's the top level of the 1 to 15k. So they will have heard about the decision within 6 weeks of putting the application in. And it was an exhibition. It had a walking app, it had a photo competition, it had some volunteer training in it. And what I particularly liked about this was quite astute way of presenting their in-kind. So for this, they used skilled volunteer time at £150 a day, which then they had worked out to be the equivalent of £9,000. So as you can tell from the scale of the project, that's quite a big input, and that was presented when we needed match funding as match funding for that project. So that was a very straightforward, quite a small exhibition, but some lovely associated activities with it. Lots of public engagement with the walking app and the photo competition. Then there was a small town museum in the southeast. This was an ambitious project because they applied and got 50,000. So this is another exhibition. This was based on local landscapes. And they were looking at the changing face of the local environment. And what particularly struck me with this one is that they listed really clearly all the various activities that they were going to be doing. So everything was planned out, the types of events, the numbers of workshops, the numbers of talks, the items that were going to be borrowed, the fact that we're doing a trail. So the pattern with these really is really clear what the sorts of activities within the overall project that museums are going to deliver. And that gives us a real strong feeling for the project and that it will be delivered, and you get a sense of exactly what's going to be delivered. And then the last one, specific one I picked out was, it's a kind of small, medium rural museum in Sussex. So that was for 14,000. So again, that was in that 1 to 15K. They'd have heard about this within 6 weeks. And they described themselves as the best kept secret in Sussex, and had highlighted that they needed an audience development strategy and plan to stop them being the best kept secret in Sussex. And this is a good example because this is very much about research and development, organisational development. So there were no direct outputs for public engagement at all with this. This is all about longer term activity. So they employed a marketing consultant to do the work. Then they did a marketing plan. So that's, I think at the moment, particularly relevant because museums are they're all trying to sort out new ways of doing things, new audiences, how do you reach people during this pandemic. So I thought that was a good example whereby we will absolutely fund this research and development time and expertise from somebody outside your organisation. So it's a very good way of funding a freelancer as well. We know freelancers are having really challenging times at the moment. So access costs, I referred to those earlier on. So we're really clear we don't want any barriers at all to people applying to project grants. So for example, we'll pay for a support worker for up to £300 a day. So if you need any support whatsoever applying, please get in touch with our customer services team because they can give you support and you can apply for that money. Okay, so how we make our decisions, I thought you'd be interested to know about the two sort of main differences really. So for a start, applications come in, they go into our office in Manchester, and the team there will do an eligibility check to check that applications are eligible. And as I said, at the moment for museums, that's particularly ensuring they're accredited or the project is benefiting accredited museums. Then the staff there are particularly skilled in looking at finance and management. So they do the risk check. They check, for example, that budgets do add up. I'm sorry, we do receive applications where budgets don't. So that's really important that we get budgets that add up. And they look at any particular risks raised by management. And that, again, I said is the part where we encourage people to give examples of projects managed before, so that we can see clearly that you're giving us the confidence that you're going to deliver this project really effectively. And then for applications under 15, they go directly out to the areas, and that application will go to a panel. They have weekly panel meetings, and the panel members will read your application, so they see that. And then you will get a decision, as I said, within the 6 weeks. For applications that are over the £15,000, then a relationship manager will do a written appraisal. And for museums, that will usually be a museum relationship manager. If it isn't, we work very, very closely, so there will be definitely museum input into that appraisal. And again, that goes to a decision meeting. And as part of the decision letter, you will get a copy of your appraisal. So if you're not successful, there will be some really good pointers in there for what to do and to encourage you really to resubmit if you feel that your project could be tweaked. So if you are successful, I thought it might be useful to show you the finances. So you have a month to accept the offer. And then we normally pay the money in stages. So for 15,000 and under, you get 90% of that amount up front. And then at the end, you will get, when the project's completed, you get 10%. For the over 15,000, you get 50% up front. You'll do an interim report to us. You get further 40% and then 10% at the end. And what we ask everybody is to do is to complete a final activity report. Those are pretty light touch, and what we're really interested in is actually your lessons learned. So if you tried something for the first time, it didn't work that well, please tell us. We're really interested. It won't, you know, it's that lesson learned that we want to hear most of all. So we want to know those challenges as well as those successes within those projects. We ask you to display our logo, but also to promote the fact if you're getting your funding through the National Lottery, that we like to thank our National Lottery players. So in terms of advice and guidance, all the information is on the website. If you Google Project Grants, you'll find it. We've got our customer services team ready to take enquiries at enquiries@artscouncil.org.uk. And relationship managers are, because we're all working online at the moment, are able to set up surgeries. So there might be some surgeries in your areas. But as this is part of training museum development officers, then we recommend that you go to your local museum development officer and they will be able to give you lots of support.